Disclaimer: the strategies, marketing methods, and financial concepts discussed in this video are for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am not a licensed financial advisor, a real estate broker, or an attorney. The real estate market and digital marketing landscapes are highly volatile and subject to strict federal, state, and local regulations, including but not limited to the CAN-SPAM Act, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, and the specific advertising guidelines enforced by your local real estate commission or board of realtors. Any figures, conversion rates, or income levels mentioned throughout this presentation are not typical and should never be interpreted as a guarantee of your future results. Your success depends entirely on your individual work ethic, market conditions, budget, and business acumen. Past performance and historical trends are never indicative of future potential outcomes. You must conduct your own independent due diligence and consult with qualified legal and financial professionals before implementing any new marketing campaigns, software investments, or business strategies. You assume all risks associated with the application of the information provided in this masterclass. What if I told you that the single greatest lie sold to real estate agents today is that you need to be dancing on social media platforms or aggressively buying overpriced, shared online leads just to survive in this highly competitive industry? Right now, across the United States, hundreds of thousands of dedicated real estate professionals are actively burning through their hard-earned commission checks. They are pouring thousands of dollars every single month into massive corporate lead generation portals that sell the exact same unverified phone numbers and email addresses to 5, 6, or sometimes even 10 competing agents simultaneously. You know the exact scenario because you have likely lived it. Your phone buzzes with a new lead notification. Your heart rate spikes with anticipation. You drop absolutely everything you are doing, you excuse yourself from a quiet family dinner, and you frantically dial the number within 30 seconds, only to hear a profoundly frustrated voice on the other end scream that you are the 15th realtor to call them today, before aggressively hanging up the phone. This is not a sustainable or scalable business model. This is a highly stressful, high-stakes lottery that leads directly to burnout. The National Association of Realtors has historically reported staggering attrition rates, with industry data often suggesting that a massive percentage of all new agents fail and leave the industry entirely within their first 5 years of obtaining their license. They do not fail because they do not know how to write a standard purchase and sale agreement. They do not fail because they lack a genuine passion for helping families find their dream homes. They fail because they exhaust their emotional bandwidth and completely deplete their financial capital chasing cold, hostile strangers instead of cultivating a predictable, owned audience of willing participants. But what if there was an entirely different reality available to you right now? What if you could permanently step off that exhausting hamster wheel of cold calling expired listings at 8 o'clock in the morning, dodging aggressive dogs while door knocking in the sweltering heat, and desperately trying to game completely unpredictable social media algorithms that change without warning? Consider the historical trends and carefully documented case studies of top-producing agents who quietly dominate their local markets without ever going viral or seeking internet fame. They possess a hidden asset, an incredibly powerful piece of digital real estate that they actually own, control, and leverage to generate a consistent, predictable pipeline of highly qualified buyers and sellers. This distinct asset is completely immune to sudden algorithm changes. It does not charge you exorbitant 30% referral fees at the closing table. And perhaps most importantly, it operates continuously in the background, quietly nurturing relationships and building immense trust 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even while you are sleeping, showing houses to active clients, or finally taking a much-needed vacation without feeling the agonizing need to check your phone every 3 minutes. We are talking about the completely misunderstood, highly underestimated, and strategically neglected world of professional email marketing. The vast majority of real estate agents genuinely believe email marketing is dead, simply because their own execution of it is completely flawed and fundamentally broken. They send out generic, automated, company-branded newsletters filled with incredibly boring recipes for potato salad, generic daylight saving time reminders, and highly technical market updates filled with jargon that the average consumer does not understand or care about. They then sit back and wonder why their open rates hover around a dismal 3%, and their unsubscribe rates skyrocket week after week. They treat their database like a massive dumping ground for irrelevant corporate propaganda, instead of treating it like the multi-million-dollar relationship asset it genuinely has the potential to be. Today, we are going completely behind the curtain and destroying those old, ineffective methods. I am going to reveal the exact mechanics of a highly optimized, high-converting real estate email marketing ecosystem that actively separates the struggling, stressed amateur from the true, relaxed market leader. By the time we are finished exploring these concepts, you will understand exactly why the agents who master this specific communication channel are the ones building substantial, sustainable businesses, while everyone else is fighting over expensive table scraps in the highly toxic comment sections of viral videos. In this deep dive masterclass, I am going to completely dismantle everything you thought you knew about modern real estate marketing and rebuild your strategy from the ground up using 3 meticulously detailed, remarkably simple, yet devastatingly effective steps to drastically increase your lead generation through the strategic use of email. This is not about sending more spam or annoying your sphere of influence. This is about deploying calculated communication architecture based on proven psychological principles. First, we will extensively uncover the psychology behind capturing the single most valuable digital asset in the modern digital economy: a verified primary email address from a highly motivated prospective buyer or seller located precisely in your specific geographic farm area. I will break down detailed case studies of high-converting lead magnets that compel local residents to willingly, eagerly, and happily hand over their contact information to you, completely bypassing the frustrating need for you to ever buy another recycled internet lead again. Second, we will dive exceptionally deep into the specific sequencing, copywriting frameworks, and behavioral triggers that systematically transform a completely cold, skeptical subscriber into a warm, trusting prospect who actively anticipates and opens your emails. You will learn how to craft compelling hyperlocal narratives that position you not just as another transactional salesperson pushing for a commission, but as the undeniable, indispensable, and deeply knowledgeable mayor of your local real estate market. We will explore how to write subject lines that command attention and body copy that reads like a letter from a trusted friend rather than a desperate pitch from a corporation. Finally, we will dissect the exact conversion mechanics, the subtle yet powerful calls to action, and the psychological tripwires that prompt these carefully nurtured subscribers to finally raise their hands, reach out to you directly, and actively ask for your professional representation when they are exactly ready to list their property or write a competitive offer. I will systematically show you how to structure these ongoing campaigns so that your calendar is filled exclusively with valuable appointments, allowing you to spend your precious time speaking with people who already know you, genuinely like you, and fundamentally trust your specialized expertise. If you have been struggling for years with terrifying feast or famine commission cycles, if you are physically and mentally exhausted from endless cold prospecting, and if you are finally ready to build a scalable, predictable business infrastructure that yields long-term potential outcomes based on solid historical trends, you are exactly where you need to be today. Grab a dedicated notebook, completely silence your phone, remove all distractions, and strictly prepare to completely transform the way you approach real estate lead generation forever. Let us talk about the very first step in this entire ecosystem, which is fundamentally changing the way you ask for a prospect's contact information. Right now, in the year 2026, the modern consumer is fiercely protective of their primary email address. Their inbox is their most guarded digital sanctuary, constantly bombarded by retail promotions, work correspondence, and endless streams of automated spam. When a prospective homebuyer or seller lands on your real estate website and sees a generic form begging them to subscribe to your free newsletter or sign up for automated market updates, their immediate psychological response is intense resistance. Historical trends clearly demonstrate that these generic, low-effort opt-in forms have conversion rates that are practically non-existent, often hovering well below half of 1%. The average consumer already knows exactly what happens when they fill out that form. They know they will be instantly subjected to a relentless barrage of generic property listings and uninspired corporate marketing material. You must fundamentally understand that an email address has actual, tangible value. You are asking the consumer to pay you with their digital contact information, and right now, you are simply not offering anything of equivalent value in return. To reverse this dynamic and drastically alter your potential outcomes, you must implement a highly specialized, hyperlocal lead magnet. A lead magnet is a completely free, highly valuable digital asset that specifically solves one immediate, painful problem for your ideal client in exchange for their email address. We need to look at a highly detailed case study to understand the profound impact of this shift. Consider the business of David Robertson, an active real estate professional operating in the intensely competitive market of Scottsdale, Arizona. For years, David struggled with traditional digital marketing. He drove expensive paid traffic to a standard website where he asked visitors to register simply to view MLS listings. He was competing directly against massive international real estate portals that offered a far superior user experience for property searches. His cost per lead was astronomical, and the quality of the contact information he captured was absolutely abysmal. David was trapped in a cycle of paying for traffic that simply bounced off his website because he offered no unique, compelling reason for them to stay. David completely transformed his entire business model by abandoning the generic property search trap and focusing strictly on hyperlocal education. He analyzed the historical trends in his specific micromarket and identified a massive point of anxiety for local homeowners, which was the highly confusing, rapidly changing landscape of local property tax assessments and new municipal zoning laws affecting short-term rentals. David spent an entire weekend compiling a meticulously detailed, 15-page digital document titled The Complete Scottsdale Homeowner's Guide to Navigating 2026 Property Tax Assessments and Maximizing Your Home Equity. This was not a generic corporate brochure. It featured deep, specific insights into local municipal codes, historical data on neighborhood appreciation rates, and clear, actionable steps for homeowners who felt overwhelmed by their rising tax burdens. The psychological shift in his marketing was immediate and profound. David stopped asking for a favor and started offering a highly specialized lifeline. When local residents encountered his targeted advertisements offering this specific guide, they were no longer dealing with a desperate salesperson looking for a listing. They were engaging with a recognized, authoritative local expert who had already done the heavy lifting to solve their exact problem. They willingly and eagerly traded their absolute best, primary email addresses to acquire this information. Imagine if you possessed a digital asset exactly like this, operating completely in the background of your business right now. Imagine if you woke up every single morning to find 5, 10, or even 15 highly qualified local homeowners who had willingly raised their hands and provided their verified contact information because you offered them something they genuinely needed. You completely bypass the rejection of cold calling and immediately establish a relationship based entirely on immense value and proven expertise. Let us break down the precise step-by-step mechanics of creating a lead magnet that actually converts in today's demanding digital landscape. The first and most critical step is identifying a highly specific, geographically constrained pain point. You cannot create a generic guide titled How to Buy a House. That is far too broad, and the internet is already flooded with millions of similar articles. Instead, you must narrow your focus to a hyperlocal level. You create a guide titled The Ultimate Strategy for Winning a Multiple Offer Situation specifically in the Cherry Creek neighborhood of Denver. The more specific your demographic and geographic targeting, the higher your conversion rates will inevitably be. Step 2 requires you to structure the content for immediate, actionable consumption. The modern consumer has an incredibly short attention span. Your lead magnet should not be a dense academic textbook. It must be a streamlined, highly visual document that delivers rapid, tangible victories. Use clear bullet points, easily digestible data charts based on historical trends, and definitive step-by-step checklists. Step 3 involves the architecture of your dedicated landing page. This single page has one strictly defined purpose, which is to convert a visitor into a subscriber. You must remove absolutely all distractions. There should be no links to your homepage, no links to your social media profiles, and no complicated navigation menus. The page must strictly feature a highly compelling headline that clearly states the core benefit of your guide, a few bullet points outlining what they will learn, and a simple frictionless form asking strictly for their first name and their email address. Every single additional field you add to that form, such as a phone number or a physical mailing address, will significantly decrease your overall conversion rate. Let us examine another powerful case study to illustrate the versatility of this strategy. Sarah Jenkins, an agent in Charlotte, North Carolina, decided to target the highly lucrative demographic of out-of-state buyers relocating for the expanding technology sector in her city. She recognized that these specific buyers were incredibly stressed, not just about finding a physical house, but about the entire overwhelming process of completely uprooting their families. Sarah created an exhaustive lead magnet titled The Complete 2026 Charlotte Relocation Master Checklist for Tech Professionals. This massive document went far beyond standard real estate advice. It included hyperlocal maps of optimal commuting routes during rush hour, detailed breakdowns of specialized STEM programs in local school districts, and comprehensive guides to the cultural nuances of different Charlotte neighborhoods. By addressing the holistic, overarching stress of the entire relocation process, Sarah instantly positioned herself as an indispensable local ambassador long before she ever requested a buyer representation agreement. Her potential outcomes shifted dramatically from struggling to find cold leads to managing a consistent inbound pipeline of highly compensated professionals who explicitly trusted her deep local knowledge. You must utilize your social media platforms, your local networking events, and your targeted digital advertisements not as the final destination for your audience, but strictly as highly efficient traffic engines designed specifically to drive targeted individuals directly to your lead magnet landing page. You are constantly moving attention away from platforms you completely do not control and aggressively funneling it into an exclusive digital ecosystem that you completely own and dictate. But capturing that highly coveted email address is merely the very first phase of this comprehensive strategy. Once David and Sarah successfully acquired those valuable contact details, they immediately faced an entirely new, significantly more complex, and heavily nuanced challenge. What exactly happens the moment after they click download? How do you carefully initiate a conversation without instantly sounding like every other desperate, pushy salesperson in the market? How do you strategically prevent that newly acquired, highly cautious subscriber from immediately hitting the unsubscribe button or banishing your message to the spam folder the very first time you attempt to contact them? The answer to these critical questions lies in a highly structured, psychologically engineered sequence of automated communications that the vast majority of real estate professionals completely misunderstand and ultimately ruin. In the next phase of this deep dive, we are going to completely tear down the exact step-by-step copywriting frameworks and the precise communication timing you must deploy to systematically transform a completely cold digital download into a highly motivated, ready-to-transact client appointment. And I will reveal the exact psychological trigger that practically forces them to eagerly open your very next email. The exact psychological trigger that practically forces them to eagerly open your very next email is rooted in a concept originally pioneered by the entertainment industry, but beautifully adapted for high-level direct response digital marketing. It is called the open-loop narrative structure, and it is the absolute antithesis of the standard, incredibly boring real estate newsletter. When a local homeowner downloads your hyperlocal guide, their defensive walls are still incredibly high. They expect you to immediately hit them with a high-pressure sales pitch asking for a listing appointment. The vast majority of agents fulfill this terrible expectation by configuring their automated customer relationship management software to instantly send a generic message saying, "Thank you for downloading. I am a multi-million-dollar producer. Please call me to sell your house." This approach is absolutely devastating to your long-term potential outcomes. It instantly trains the subscriber that your emails are entirely self-serving, aggressively transactional, and completely devoid of ongoing value. Instead of immediately asking for a massive commitment, you must implement a meticulously crafted, multi-day welcome sequence that reads less like a corporate brochure and entirely like a highly anticipated television series. Consider the historical trends of primetime television and modern streaming platforms in the year 2026. They do not resolve the primary conflict in the first 10 minutes of an episode. They strategically build tension, introduce relatable characters, present a massive problem, and then abruptly end the episode right before the resolution is revealed, practically forcing you to tune in next week or hit the play next button. You must apply this exact same psychological framework to your real estate email marketing strategy if you want to capture and retain human attention. Let us examine an incredible case study involving Michael Chen, an independent broker operating in the rapidly expanding and highly competitive market of Austin, Texas. Michael was generating hundreds of downloads for his digital guide detailing the hidden costs of new construction homes in the surrounding suburban developments. However, his initial follow-up sequence was a complete disaster. He was sending standard automated market updates, and his open rates plummeted from 60% on the first email down to a pathetic 4% by the third email. His highly valuable leads were going completely cold within 72 hours. Michael completely overhauled his communication architecture by deploying an open-loop welcome sequence designed specifically to build profound trust and irresistible anticipation. Email number 1 in Michael's new sequence was dispatched the very second the prospect requested the guide. The subject line did not say, "Here is your free guide." Instead, it was highly conversational and deeply intriguing. It simply read, "The new construction document you requested," plus a strange warning. Inside the body of the email, Michael delivered exactly what he promised. He provided the direct, frictionless link to download the guide, establishing immediate trust by fulfilling his initial obligation without asking for anything else. But then, he introduced the psychological tripwire. He wrote a brief paragraph stating that while the guide covers the financial aspects of new construction, there is one critical, highly specific mistake that almost every buyer makes during the final builder walkthrough that consistently costs them thousands of dollars in post-closing repairs. He deliberately did not reveal what that mistake was in this initial email. Instead, he simply stated that the email was getting too long, but he would send them another message tomorrow morning at exactly 9 o'clock detailing exactly what this costly mistake is and how to completely avoid it. Imagine if you are a prospective buyer in Austin, Texas, terrified of making a massive financial blunder on a new home. You have just been warned by a recognized local expert that a severe pitfall exists, and the exact solution is arriving in your inbox tomorrow morning. You are absolutely not going to unsubscribe. You are not going to mark that email as spam. You are going to actively search for Michael's name in your inbox the following day. This is the raw power of the open loop. It commands attention, bypasses marketing defense mechanisms, and builds immense anticipation. When email number 2 arrives the next morning, the subject line simply reads the final walkthrough mistake I mentioned yesterday. Michael immediately pays off the open loop from the previous day by delivering highly valuable, actionable advice about hiring an independent, third-party inspector prior to the final builder sign-off. He shares a brief, anonymous story about a past client who almost lost $10,000 because of a hidden plumbing defect that the builder's inspector conveniently missed. He establishes total authority without ever bragging about his sales volume or his closing ratios. Then, right at the end of email number 2, he creates the very next open loop. He seamlessly transitions the narrative by stating that while independent inspections are crucial, they are absolutely nothing compared to the specific negotiation tactic he uses to get builders to gladly pay for the buyer's closing costs, a tactic he promises to reveal in tomorrow's email. By the time the subscriber reaches email number 3, they have been entirely conditioned to eagerly open your messages. They recognize your name, they value your insights, and they perceive you as a highly trusted advisor rather than a desperate, commission-breath salesperson. You have successfully bypassed their natural skepticism and built a profound parasocial relationship. You are demonstrating your profound expertise through actual, applied knowledge, rather than generic marketing slogans. This specific framework, when executed with patience and precision, completely alters the historical trends of email marketing conversion rates. Instead of a linear decline in engagement, agents utilizing this narrative structure consistently report sustained open rates hovering between 40 and 55% well into the second and third weeks of their automated campaigns. This carefully orchestrated welcome sequence is the critical bridge between capturing the initial lead and ultimately securing the active client. It typically lasts for 5 to 7 days, depending entirely on the complexity of your specific market and the depth of the educational narrative you are constructing. But a welcome sequence, no matter how engaging, cannot last forever. Eventually, you must transition the subscriber out of this initial indoctrination phase and seamlessly integrate them into your long-term, ongoing nurture campaign, which is the steady, reliable heartbeat of your entire digital ecosystem. This long-term campaign is where the vast majority of your actual revenue will be generated over the next 6 to 18 months. It requires a completely different pacing, a distinct rhythm of content delivery, and a highly nuanced understanding of how to stay top of mind without becoming an annoying digital pest. Many agents mistakenly believe that once the welcome sequence concludes, they should just add the subscriber to a generic weekly blast containing current national interest rates and pictures of houses they recently sold to other people. This is a catastrophic error that instantly destroys all the trust and anticipation you just spent an entire week carefully building. Your long-term email strategy must remain deeply rooted in engaging storytelling, hyperlocal community insights, and subtle, completely frictionless calls to action. You must learn the exact optimal ratio of educational content to promotional requests. Send too much education, and you become a free public library where no one ever actually hires you to negotiate a contract. Send too many promotional requests, and you immediately burn out your database and completely destroy your sender reputation with major email service providers. To master this delicate balance, you must implement the concept of the soft pitch. A soft pitch is a highly strategic, low-pressure invitation embedded naturally within an otherwise purely educational email. For example, instead of blasting a dedicated email screaming at people to call you immediately for a free home valuation, you send a deeply engaging story about a recent commercial zoning change in a specific neighborhood, and how it drastically affected residential property values in that specific corridor over the last 6 months. You provide immense, localized value. Then, in the final sentence or in the brief postscript of the email, you casually mention that if they are curious how this specific zoning change might impact the current equity position of their own property, they can simply reply directly to this email with their street address for a private, no-obligation analysis. This approach completely removes the friction and anxiety associated with contacting a real estate agent. You are not asking them to fill out a massive lead capture form, commit to a lengthy phone call, or schedule an intimidating in-person appointment. You are simply asking them to hit the reply button and type a few simple words. This creates a natural, organic, two-way conversation that completely bypasses the traditional, highly defensive buyer or seller dynamic. When you deliberately condition your database to interact with you in this casual, highly conversational manner, you are systematically setting the stage for massive long-term potential outcomes. Your email replies become a completely private, highly exclusive lead generation channel that your local competitors cannot see, cannot copy, and absolutely cannot intercept. But having a brilliantly written welcome sequence and thoroughly mastering the art of the soft pitch is still entirely useless if your emails never actually reach the recipient's primary inbox. The harsh reality of email marketing in 2026 is that major technology conglomerates deploy ruthlessly aggressive artificial intelligence algorithms designed specifically to aggressively filter out automated marketing messages, sending them straight to the dreaded promotions tab or even worse, the black hole of the spam folder where they will absolutely never be seen by human eyes. You can write the most compelling narrative in the history of real estate, but if the machine decides your email looks like spam, your entire strategy instantly collapses. There are incredibly specific, highly technical back-end configurations and daily sender habits that you absolutely must strictly adhere to if you want to survive the algorithmic filters and consistently land in the primary inbox. In the next segment of this masterclass, we are going to dive incredibly deep into the technical architecture of email deliverability, and I am going to show you the hidden settings inside your domain registrar that are silently destroying your campaign performance right now without you even realizing it. The brutal reality of digital communication in the year 2026 is that the largest email service providers employ fiercely aggressive, sophisticated artificial intelligence algorithms designed specifically to protect their users from unsolicited garbage. These invisible gatekeepers do not care how beautifully written your neighborhood market update is, or how many hours you spent agonizing over the perfect subject line. If your underlying technical infrastructure lacks the proper digital authentication, these algorithms will automatically classify your hard work as a malicious threat and bury it deep within the spam folder, completely destroying your potential outcomes before the recipient even has a chance to ignore you. The vast majority of real estate agents operate under the dangerous assumption that simply buying a domain name and paying a monthly fee for a customer relationship management platform automatically grants them unrestricted access to the primary inbox. This is a profound misconception. To bypass these algorithmic gatekeepers, you must manually configure 3 specific, highly technical records hidden deep within your domain name system settings. These 3 records form the holy trinity of email deliverability, and without them, your marketing budget is effectively being set on fire. First, we must deeply examine the sender policy framework, commonly referred to as the SPF record. Think of your SPF record precisely like the authorized guest list at a highly exclusive, heavily guarded gated community. When your email marketing software attempts to deliver a message on your behalf, the receiving server immediately stops the email at the gate and checks your domain's public SPF record. It is actively looking to see if the specific software you are using is explicitly listed on your authorized guest list. If you are using a popular real estate marketing platform to send your neighborhood updates, but you never manually added that platform's specific IP address to your SPF record, the receiving server will view the email as an imposter attempting to break in. It will permanently block the message or instantly route it to the spam folder. Implementing an SPF record is not a mere suggestion in the modern digital landscape. It is an absolute foundational requirement for establishing basic trust with major internet service providers. The second critical component you must configure is Domain Keys Identified Mail, universally known as DKIM. While the SPF record acts as the guest list, DKIM operates as a highly sophisticated, cryptographic tamper-proof seal placed directly on the envelope of your email. In the real estate industry, you deal with highly sensitive wire transfer instructions and heavily scrutinized legal contracts, which require absolute verification of authenticity. DKIM serves this exact same purpose for your digital marketing. When you configure DKIM within your domain registrar, you are effectively attaching a unique, invisible digital signature to every single email you send. When the receiving server intercepts your message, it mathematically verifies this signature to ensure that the contents of your email were not maliciously altered or intercepted while in transit across the internet. If the cryptographic signature matches, the gatekeeper algorithm assigns you a massive trust score increase, drastically improving your historical trends of landing directly in the highly coveted primary inbox. The third and arguably most powerful setting you must implement is domain-based message authentication, reporting, and conformance, or DMARC. DMARC is the ultimate enforcer of your digital reputation. It specifically instructs the receiving email servers exactly what to do if an incoming message fails either the SPF guest list check or the DKIM signature verification. Many malicious actors and international scammers actively attempt to spoof the email addresses of successful local real estate agents to trick unsuspecting consumers into wiring fraudulent escrow deposits. By publishing a strict DMARC policy, you are publicly telling the entire internet to completely reject and destroy any email claiming to be from your domain that does not pass your strict authentication protocols. This not only protects the general public from dangerous phishing scams, but it completely insulates your sender reputation from being destroyed by malicious third parties. Let us look at a highly revealing case study that perfectly illustrates the devastating financial impact of ignoring these technical settings. Consider the business of Jessica Reynolds, a top-producing luxury listing agent operating in the highly lucrative market of Seattle, Washington. Jessica invested thousands of dollars hiring an elite copywriter to craft a brilliant, 30-day educational email sequence targeting high-net-worth individuals relocating for the local technology sector. Her content was absolutely flawless, featuring deep demographic insights and exclusive, off-market property tours. However, after launching the massive campaign to a database of 3,000 highly qualified contacts, her analytics dashboard reported a catastrophic open rate of less than 2%. She did not receive a single phone call, text message, or showing request. Jessica assumed the copy was terrible and almost abandoned the entire strategy. However, a technical audit of her domain revealed that she was sending thousands of emails through a third-party software without ever configuring her SPF, DKIM, or DMARC records. Major inbox providers in Seattle completely blacklisted her domain within 24 hours of her initial launch. Once she hired an IT professional to correctly input these simple text records into her domain registrar, she relaunched the exact same campaign. Her historical trends immediately reversed, and her open rate skyrocketed to an astonishing 42%, resulting in 3 immediate listing appointments from highly motivated sellers who simply had never seen her previous messages. Imagine if you are currently sitting on a database of 5,000 local homeowners that you have spent the last decade meticulously collecting from open house sign-in sheets, community events, and past transactions. Imagine if you finally decide to send out a highly valuable hyperlocal market update, but because you neglected these hidden DNS settings, 4,800 of those emails are silently deleted by artificial intelligence before your prospects ever see your name. You are entirely invisible to the exact people you are trying to serve. This is precisely why you must treat your digital infrastructure with the exact same level of extreme meticulousness that you apply to reviewing a final closing disclosure. Furthermore, simply authenticating your domain is not the final step in protecting your deliverability. You must absolutely master the rigorous discipline of continuous list hygiene. The modern real estate agent completely hoards email addresses, terrified to ever delete a single contact. This is a fundamentally flawed strategy that destroys your sender reputation. Email addresses actively decay at an alarming rate. People constantly change jobs, abandon old service providers, and completely forget their passwords. If you continually send messages to inactive, bouncing, or completely dead email addresses, the major inbox providers will algorithmically determine that you are an irresponsible spammer who does not actively manage their database. You must utilize specialized list verification software to ruthlessly scrub your database every single quarter, permanently removing any contact that has not actively opened or clicked one of your emails in the last 180 days. By intentionally shrinking your list to only include highly engaged, active participants, you drastically increase your overall engagement percentages, which signals to the algorithms that your content is highly desired, thereby permanently cementing your VIP access to the primary inbox. But establishing perfect technical deliverability and maintaining a flawlessly clean database only solves half of the ultimate conversion equation. You have successfully bypassed the artificial intelligence gatekeepers. You have successfully navigated the spam filters. Your hyperlocal, deeply educational email has finally landed safely and prominently in the primary inbox of a highly motivated, wealthy homeowner located exactly in your geographic farm area. They recognize your name from the brilliant open-loop welcome sequence we discussed earlier. They trust your authority. They actually opened the email and read your content. But now you face the absolute ultimate challenge of this entire digital marketing ecosystem. How do you seamlessly transition from being a highly respected, free educational resource into an actively hired, heavily compensated real estate professional? How do you write the exact, precisely calibrated call to action that psychologically compels them to stop reading, pick up their smartphone, and actively request your professional representation to list their most valuable financial asset? In the next crucial phase of this masterclass, we are going to completely dissect the specific conversion mechanics of the real estate soft pitch, and I will reveal the exact 13-word sentence structure you must place at the very bottom of your emails that practically forces highly qualified sellers to instantly raise their hands and ask for your help. The exact 13-word sentence structure is deceptively simple, yet mathematically engineered to completely bypass the psychological defense mechanisms of the modern property owner. Here is the exact phrasing you must begin using immediately. Reply to this email with your street address for a private equity analysis. That is exactly 13 words. Let us deeply analyze why this specific combination of words drastically outperforms the massive, bright red graphical buttons that currently pollute 99% of all real estate marketing campaigns across the nation. The modern consumer in the year 2026 has developed an intense, subconscious blindness to traditional marketing graphics. When a homeowner reads your highly educational email about local zoning changes, and then reaches a massive graphic button at the bottom screaming at them to click for a free home valuation, their brain immediately classifies the entire interaction as a high-pressure sales pitch. The perceived friction is astronomical. They assume clicking that button will seamlessly redirect them to a complicated landing page requiring them to fill out a massive questionnaire, input their private cell phone number, and subsequently subject themselves to endless automated cold calls from a massive real estate brokerage. By completely eliminating the graphical button and replacing it with a plain text request to simply reply to the email, you drastically lower the barrier to entry and entirely neutralize their defensive posture. Consider a highly revealing case study involving John Martinez, a veteran listing agent operating in the intensely competitive market of Miami, Florida. John spent the first half of the year broadcasting beautifully designed, graphic-heavy market reports to his database of 4,000 local contacts. At the bottom of every single email, he featured a massive graphic asking users to click a link to find out what their home is worth. His historical trends showed an abysmal click-through rate of less than 0.2%. John decided to completely strip away all the complicated HTML graphics and switch to a strict plain text format, concluding his weekly educational emails with our exact 13-word sentence. The potential outcomes were absolutely staggering, because the request felt exactly like a natural, one-to-one conversation between two human beings rather than a massive corporate broadcast. His inbox began filling with direct replies from local homeowners quietly wondering about their current property values amidst the fluctuating 2026 interest rate environment. He successfully removed the corporate barrier and invited a casual, highly approachable conversation. This 13-word sentence is incredibly powerful on its own, but it is just one component of a much broader, highly sophisticated conversion strategy known as the super signature. Extensive historical trends in direct response copywriting and digital marketing reveal a fascinating behavioral pattern regarding how human beings actually consume email content. They typically read the subject line, they quickly skim the opening paragraph to gauge relevance, and then they immediately scroll all the way down to the very bottom to see who exactly sent the message and what specific action is being asked of them. The postscript, commonly known as the PS section, is consistently the second most heavily read piece of digital real estate in your entire email. If you are not strategically leveraging the postscript to deploy your soft pitches, you are completely leaving massive amounts of potential revenue on the table. Let us meticulously examine another case study featuring Amanda Clark, a highly successful real estate agent operating in the rapidly expanding suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. Amanda structurally separated her pure educational content from her promotional offers by utilizing a highly optimized super signature at the very bottom of every single email broadcast. After delivering a deeply engaging story about local school district expansions and how they impact neighborhood desirability, she signed off naturally. Then, directly below her signature block, she implemented a structured postscript offering 3 distinct, low-friction paths for her subscribers to take exactly when they felt ready to transact. Path 1 was our exact 13-word sentence strictly targeting potential sellers who wanted a private equity analysis. Path 2 was a simple text invitation asking readers to reply with the word tour to receive a highly exclusive, private list of off-market properties, strictly targeting highly motivated buyers. Path 3 was a casual, value-driven offer to connect them directly with her highly vetted network of local contractors, plumbers, and electricians for any upcoming home renovation projects. By deliberately providing these multiple, frictionless avenues for engagement, Amanda fundamentally transformed her weekly educational email into a silent, highly efficient, completely automated lead generation machine that catered seamlessly to every single segment of her database without ever sounding desperate or aggressive. Imagine if your email marketing ecosystem functioned exactly like this right now. Instead of dreading the soul-crushing process of cold prospecting every single morning, you simply open your laptop on a Tuesday after enjoying your coffee and find 3 direct replies from local residents who have already happily consumed your educational content, established a deep parasocial relationship with your brand, and are now proactively asking for your professional input on their highly specific real estate situations. You are absolutely no longer chasing cold, hostile leads who view your phone calls as an annoying interruption. You are gracefully receiving inbound, highly qualified inquiries from a deeply nurtured audience that already views you as the definitive, undeniable local authority in your specific market. To properly execute this framework, you must completely master the conversational pivot. The transition from your primary educational story directly into your soft pitch must be absolutely seamless and logically sound. You cannot write a deeply emotional story about a local community charity event and then aggressively pivot into a hard pitch demanding a listing appointment. The transition must logically flow from the educational premise you just established. If your email heavily discusses the historical trends of shrinking housing inventory in a highly specific zip code, your soft pitch in the postscript must naturally position your private equity analysis as the obvious, logical next step for anyone curious about exactly how that shrinking inventory affects their personal net worth. The context of your subtle offer must always align perfectly with the context of the deep education you just provided to the reader. Let us dig even deeper into the mechanical advantages of plain text emails versus heavily designed HTML templates, because this directly impacts your overall potential outcomes. When you send a plain text email featuring our 13-word conversion sentence, you are not just drastically improving the psychological reception of your marketing message, you are significantly improving your technical deliverability, which we extensively discussed in the previous segment. Major inbox algorithms heavily scrutinize emails packed with massive image files, complex background formatting, and multiple tracking links. They instantly associate these specific elements with massive corporate bulk mailers and promotional spam. A plain text email inherently looks exactly like a personal message you would send directly to a close friend, a family member, or a past client. It easily glides through the aggressive promotional filters and lands safely and prominently in the primary inbox. You are systematically engineering a high deliverability, high conversion communication vehicle that completely outperforms the highly expensive, overly complicated software platforms your local competitors are currently using to blast generic garbage to their neglected databases. Furthermore, you must meticulously prepare yourself for the wildly varying types of responses you will inevitably receive when you deploy this highly effective 13-word framework. Some homeowners will simply reply with their street address and absolutely nothing else, providing zero context. Other subscribers will write you a massive 3-paragraph essay detailing their recent kitchen renovations, their exact timeline for retiring in 5 years, and their profound fears regarding the current housing market fluctuations. You must deliberately treat every single reply as an incredibly fragile, highly valuable digital asset. The exact moment a subscriber finally hits the reply button, they permanently transition from a passive, anonymous reader to an active, vulnerable participant. They have taken the first terrifying step toward a massive financial transaction, and exactly how you handle that specific moment of vulnerability will completely dictate your long-term potential outcomes. Most real estate agents completely panic when they finally get a hot reply from an email campaign. They immediately pick up the phone, completely abandon their carefully crafted educational positioning, and instantly revert back to aggressive, commission-breath sales tactics, effectively terrifying the prospect and completely destroying the carefully cultivated relationship in a matter of seconds. You have successfully generated the inbound lead, which is a massive victory, but physically securing the actual appointment requires an entirely different psychological framework and a highly disciplined conversational approach. You must master the delicate art of the digital triage. In the next vital segment of this masterclass, we are going to completely dissect the exact conversational scripts and the precise behavioral pacing you must utilize the very moment that highly coveted reply lands in your inbox. And I am going to reveal the highly counterintuitive reverse consultation framework that practically forces the prospect to aggressively sell you on why you should be their real estate agent. The moment that highly coveted reply finally lands in your inbox, your natural biological response as a commissioned salesperson is to experience a massive spike in adrenaline. You have spent weeks meticulously building a digital relationship, carefully curating your educational content, and protecting your sender reputation. Now, a real human being living exactly in your target neighborhood has raised their hand and provided their street address. The traditional real estate training models deployed across the nation aggressively instruct you to immediately drop absolutely everything you are doing. They tell you to frantically pull the municipal tax records, aggressively generate a massive comparative market analysis, and immediately bombard the prospect with a high-pressure email demanding an in-person listing appointment for that exact same afternoon. This specific reaction is a catastrophic psychological error. By immediately pouncing on the prospect with overwhelming aggressive energy, you instantly shatter the carefully constructed illusion that you are a highly sought-after, deeply busy local market authority. You instantly revert from being a trusted educational resource back into the desperate, commission-hungry salesperson they were originally terrified of contacting. To permanently break this destructive cycle and maximize your long-term potential outcomes, you must fundamentally adopt the psychological posture of a highly specialized medical surgeon. Consider the historical trends of how high-level medical professionals operate in the year 2026. When you visit a renowned orthopedic surgeon, they do not greet you in the lobby, desperately shake your hand, and immediately beg you to let them perform a complex spinal surgery on you that afternoon. Instead, they position themselves as the undeniable authority. They ask you highly specific, deeply probing questions about your exact symptoms. They require you to undergo rigorous diagnostic testing. They forcefully make you articulate exactly why you need their specialized help. And ultimately, they determine if you are actually a suitable candidate for their specific operational procedures. This is the exact core mechanic of the reverse consultation framework. You must deliberately introduce a calculated layer of professional friction that forces the prospective seller to mentally qualify themselves to you before you ever offer them your highly valuable time or your proprietary market data. Let us meticulously examine a profound case study involving Marcus Vance, an independent real estate broker operating in the intensely competitive, high-density market of Atlanta, Georgia. Marcus had successfully implemented the 13-word conversion sentence at the bottom of his weekly email newsletters, and he was consistently generating a high volume of inbound replies from local homeowners requesting his private equity analysis. However, his initial conversion rate from an email reply to an actual signed listing agreement was incredibly poor. He was spending dozens of hours every single week frantically building massive, 50-page comparative market analysis reports for every single person who replied, only to have the vast majority of those homeowners completely ghost him the moment he delivered the final data. They were simply using him for free information because he offered zero resistance and required absolutely zero emotional investment from them. Marcus completely revolutionized his business by implementing a strict digital triage process immediately after receiving an inbound reply. Now, when a homeowner in Atlanta replies to Marcus with their street address, he does not immediately send them a valuation. Instead, he waits a calculated 2 hours to artificially demonstrate that he is a busy, highly demanded professional actively working with other clients. He then replies with a highly structured, emotionally detached message that strictly follows the reverse consultation architecture. His email essentially states that he has received their address, and he is more than happy to allocate the time to pull the proprietary, off-market data required for a highly accurate equity analysis. However, to ensure he is providing the most highly relevant and actionable data for their specific life situation, he asks them to briefly reply and let him know if they are simply curious about their current net worth due to the recent 2026 interest rate fluctuations, or if they are actively considering a physical relocation within the next 6 to 12 months. This single qualifying question completely changes the entire power dynamic of the relationship. It is a highly strategic micro-commitment. If the homeowner is just a nosy neighbor looking for free data with absolutely zero intention of ever selling, They will typically ignore the email, which perfectly protects Marcus from wasting hours of his valuable time on a completely dead lead. However, if the homeowner is genuinely experiencing financial distress, navigating a complex divorce, or preparing for an imminent corporate relocation, they will eagerly reply and emotionally unload their entire situation onto Marcus. They will aggressively explain their exact timeline, their deep fears about the current market conditions, and their specific financial goals. Without ever picking up a telephone or stepping foot inside their living room, Marcus has successfully forced the prospect to explicitly state exactly why they desperately need his professional representation. Imagine if your daily workflow operated exactly like this optimized system. Imagine if you never again wasted a single Saturday morning driving across town to deliver a massive presentation to a homeowner who is 3 years away from actually selling. Instead, you are sitting at your desk, calmly reviewing detailed, highly emotional emails from motivated sellers who have actively passed your digital triage and are now practically begging you to help them solve their massive real estate problems. This framework completely eliminates the horrific emotional roller coaster of standard real estate lead generation. It systematically isolates the casual browsers from the highly motivated transactors, allowing you to focus 100% of your cognitive energy strictly on the individuals who actually represent immediate, tangible revenue for your business. Once the prospect replies to your triage question and reveals their underlying motivation, you execute the final step of the digital transition, which is migrating the conversation from the email inbox to a strictly controlled, highly professional phone consultation. You do not ask them for a listing appointment. You simply reply to their detailed explanation by validating their specific concerns and offering a brief, 15-minute diagnostic phone call to review the preliminary data and discuss their potential options. You meticulously frame this phone call not as a high-stakes sales pitch, but purely as an educational strategy session to help them gain total clarity on their current equity position. You deliberately remove all the traditional friction associated with meeting a real estate agent. You provide them with exactly 2 highly specific time slots for the phone call, establishing absolute control over the scheduling process and further reinforcing your positioning as a highly demanded local expert. By the time you actually connect with this prospect on the telephone, the traditional psychological barriers have been completely obliterated. They have consumed your long-form educational content. They have recognized your unique authority in the marketplace. They have actively raised their hand for help. They have passed your rigorous digital triage, and they have explicitly articulated their deepest pain points directly to you. You are no longer a stranger cold calling them during dinner. You are the highly anticipated specialist arriving exactly at the scheduled time to deliver the precise cure they desperately need. But getting them on the phone is merely setting the stage for the final, most critical performance of your entire career. How exactly do you structure that specific diagnostic phone call so that the prospect naturally arrives at the conclusion that hiring you is the only logical decision they can possibly make? In the next crucial segment of this masterclass, we are going completely behind closed doors to break down the precise psychological architecture of the diagnostic consultation, and I am going to reveal the highly controversial silent close technique that practically forces the seller to ask you for the listing agreement before you ever even offer it to them. The exact moment the phone rings for that scheduled 15-minute diagnostic consultation, the entire dynamic of your real estate business hinges on your ability to control your own vocal cords. The historical trends of sales psychology clearly demonstrate that the person who speaks the most during a negotiation is almost always the person who holds the least amount of power. The vast majority of real estate agents, completely fueled by nervous energy and a desperate need to prove their worth, immediately vomit their entire resume the second the prospect says hello. They frantically list their recent sales volume, they brag about their brokerage market share, and they aggressively pitch their drone photography packages before ever taking a single breath to understand the actual human being on the other end of the line. This completely destroys the medical surgeon positioning we meticulously built in the previous email sequence. You must fundamentally understand that this phone call is not a listing presentation. It is a highly disciplined fact-finding mission designed specifically to agitate the underlying pain of their current living situation and logically position your professional representation as the only viable escape route. To execute this flawlessly, you must implement a framework of rigorous Socratic questioning. You open the call precisely at the scheduled minute, establishing immediate professional boundaries. You acknowledge the specific details they provided in their email reply, proving that you actively listen and deeply care about their unique situation. Then you begin asking deeply layered, emotionally resonant questions that force them to verbalize the exact consequences of not selling their property. Consider a detailed case study of Robert Sterling, a highly analytical real estate professional operating in the intensely demanding market of Chicago, Illinois in the year 2026. Robert received an email reply from a local homeowner named Thomas who requested a private equity analysis because his property taxes were rapidly increasing and his children had recently moved out of state. Instead of immediately pitching a listing appointment, Robert scheduled the diagnostic call and deployed the Socratic method. Robert did not ask Thomas what price he wanted for his home. Instead, he asked Thomas how the increasing property tax burden was actively impacting his daily quality of life and his long-term retirement timeline. He asked Thomas to vividly describe the physical and emotional exhaustion of maintaining a massive empty 4-bedroom house completely alone during the brutal Chicago winters. By simply asking these highly strategic questions and completely shutting his mouth to let the prospect speak, Robert forced Thomas to verbally construct his own massive mountain of pain. Thomas practically convinced himself that staying in the house for another 12 months was a catastrophic financial and emotional mistake. He openly admitted that he was terrified of navigating the 2026 market fluctuations alone and desperately needed an exit strategy. Robert did not have to sell Thomas on the idea of moving. Thomas successfully sold himself through the guided process of answering Robert carefully engineered questions. Once the prospect has fully articulated their pain and explicitly stated their desire to achieve a specific outcome, you finally present the preliminary data from your private equity analysis. You keep this presentation incredibly brief, highly factual, and completely devoid of aggressive sales jargon. You simply state the current market absorption rates in their specific neighborhood. You outline the recent historical trends of comparable properties that successfully closed, and you provide a realistic, conservative range of their potential equity position. You deliberately do not inflate the numbers just to make them happy. You deliver the raw, unvarnished truth as a recognized local authority. And then, you execute the most terrifying, deeply uncomfortable, and wildly effective psychological maneuver in the entire real estate industry. You execute the silent close. The silent close requires absolute nerves of steel. After you deliver the final piece of market data and present the logical conclusion that their home is highly positioned to sell, you ask one incredibly simple, strictly defining question. You simply say, based on the data we just reviewed and the timeline you previously shared with me, how would you like to proceed? And then, you completely stop talking. You do not say another single word. You do not offer a suggestion. You do not try to fill the awkward void. You sit in absolute silence, even if that silence stretches for 10, 20, or 30 excruciating seconds. Human beings are fundamentally conditioned to despise conversational silence. It creates massive psychological tension. The amateur real estate agent will instantly panic during this silence and nervously start talking again, immediately offering to lower their commission rate or desperately begging to come over to see the house, completely surrendering all their negotiating power. The master real estate agent understands that the silence is doing the heavy lifting for them. The prospect is processing the data, internalizing their own stated pain points, and recognizing that the highly competent professional on the phone is completely unbothered and unattached to the outcome. The tension builds until the prospect absolutely must break the silence. Because you have flawlessly executed the digital triage, deeply agitated their pain, and presented clear, authoritative data, the prospect will almost universally fill that silent void by asking you what the next logical step is. They will literally ask you to come to their home. They will ask you how quickly you can list the property. They will explicitly ask you for the listing agreement, because you have brilliantly positioned yourself not as a salesperson pushing a product, but as a deeply trusted advisor offering a highly coveted solution. Imagine if your entire business operated with this level of extreme predictability. Imagine if you completely eliminated the horrific anxiety of traditional cold calling objections, because your email marketing ecosystem systematically conditioned the prospect to actively desire your services long before they ever heard your voice. You arrive at the physical listing appointment not to desperately audition for the job, but simply to inspect the physical asset, finalize the highly anticipated marketing strategy, and collect the required signatures. You walk through the front door already holding the definitive posture of the hired expert. This completely transforms your potential outcomes and allows you to build a highly scalable, profoundly profitable business based on mutual respect and proven historical trends, rather than sheer volume and massive burnout. However, securing the physical listing appointment through this sophisticated email and phone framework is still only fighting half the battle. Once you arrive at the property, you face the ultimate hurdle of the modern real estate transaction in 2026. The modern seller is highly educated, deeply skeptical of agent compensation, and armed with massive amounts of conflicting data from massive online portals. If you simply walk into their living room and hand them a generic boilerplate listing presentation, they will instantly attempt to aggressively negotiate your commission down to absolutely nothing. You must deploy a highly specialized, visually overwhelming pricing presentation that completely neutralizes their objections before they even have the chance to vocalize them. In the next vital phase of this masterclass, we are going to completely tear down the traditional comparative market analysis, and I am going to show you the exact three-tier pricing architecture that practically forces the seller to gladly agree to your full professional fee without ever asking for a discount. The moment you physically step into the living room of the prospective seller in the year 2026, the traditional real estate playbook is completely obsolete. The seller has already spent weeks or even months carefully consuming your highly educational email sequences. They implicitly trust your market knowledge because your digital triage process positioned you as a highly selective, deeply analytical medical surgeon rather than a desperate salesperson. However, possessing their trust does not automatically equate to them willingly surrendering a massive portion of their accumulated home equity in the form of your professional commission. The absolute fastest way to destroy all the immense goodwill and parasocial connection you built through your email marketing ecosystem is to sit down at their dining room table, slide a generic 50-page comparative market analysis across the wood, point to a single arbitrary number, and aggressively demand a massive percentage of their wealth. This deeply flawed, single-price strategy inherently invites immediate, aggressive friction. When you present only one single valuation and one single commission structure, the highly educated modern consumer feels trapped. Their natural psychological defense mechanism instantly activates, and they immediately view you as a financial adversary. They will naturally attempt to negotiate your professional fee down to absolutely nothing because they perceive your single offer as a commoditized service that they can easily acquire from a cheaper, discount brokerage down the street. To completely neutralize this adversarial dynamic and protect your financial potential outcomes, you must entirely abandon the traditional comparative market analysis and implement a highly sophisticated three-tier pricing architecture. This specific psychological framework completely shifts the conversation away from how much money you are costing them and strictly focuses the dialogue on how much total wealth you can potentially extract for them based on historical trends. Instead of dictating a single rigid price, you are empowering the seller with absolute control over their own financial destiny by presenting three distinctly different go-to-market strategies, each requiring a completely different level of professional execution and therefore commanding a completely different level of professional compensation. Let us meticulously break down the exact mechanics of this presentation. You begin by presenting the first tier, commonly referred to as the baseline liquidity valuation. You explicitly explain to the seller that this specific tier represents the absolute fastest path to the closing table. It requires zero physical preparations, zero cosmetic repairs, and absolutely zero advanced marketing on your part. You simply place the property on the multiple listing service exactly as it sits today, and you price it highly aggressively to attract massive investor attention and immediate cash offers. You explain that historical trends indicate this strategy usually yields the lowest overall net equity for the seller, but it completely removes all the stress of staging, professional photography, and endless weekend open houses. Because your financial investment and marketing bandwidth are incredibly low in this specific tier, you can offer to execute this specific strategy at a significantly reduced professional fee. You deliberately present this deeply discounted tier first to immediately prove to the seller that you are completely flexible and entirely willing to accommodate their specific needs. You then seamlessly transition to the second tier, which is the standard fair market valuation. You explain that this is the exact strategy that 95% of all real estate agents in their specific zip code utilize. It requires the seller to thoroughly clean the property, depersonalize their living spaces, and perhaps apply a fresh coat of neutral paint. You provide standard professional photography, generic digital syndication, and traditional weekend showings. You present the expected market value based on direct historical trends of similar properties in their immediate neighborhood. You explicitly state that this standard approach requires a standard professional fee. At this exact moment in the presentation, the seller recognizes that the standard service they initially expected actually requires a substantial amount of physical labor on their part, and the potential outcomes are entirely average. This is exactly when you deploy the third and final tier, strictly known as the maximum yield valuation, which is the absolute pinnacle of your professional offering. You look the seller directly in the eye and explain that this specific tier is entirely designed to shatter the neighborhood price ceiling. It requires a highly aggressive, meticulously orchestrated digital marketing campaign, premium architectural videography, targeted geographic advertising, and most importantly, the exclusive utilization of your highly nurtured hyperlocal email database that you have spent years building. You explain that you will actively pre-market their property directly to thousands of highly qualified local buyers and active investors long before it ever hits the public market. You show them highly detailed case studies of previous clients who utilized this exact maximum yield strategy to generate massive bidding wars and secure offers significantly above the standard fair market value. You explicitly state that because this specific tier requires massive financial investment on your end and extremely sophisticated digital marketing execution, it strictly requires your absolute maximum professional fee. Consider a deeply revealing case study involving William Bradley, a highly analytical listing agent operating in the rapidly appreciating market of Dallas, Texas. For years, William was constantly battered by local sellers who aggressively demanded commission reductions. He was losing massive amounts of potential revenue because he was forced to negotiate his worth on every single listing appointment. William completely transformed his entire business model by integrating his massive email marketing database directly into a strict 3-tier pricing presentation. During a highly competitive listing appointment in the spring of 2026 with a couple relocating for a technology sector job, William did not aggressively defend his standard 6% fee. He simply presented the 3 distinct tiers. He showed the couple that if they wanted a cheap discount agent, they could simply select Tier 1 and walk away with significantly less equity. However, he clearly demonstrated that by selecting Tier 3, they would gain exclusive access to his private list of 4,000 highly engaged local buyers who eagerly open his emails every single week. William effectively removed himself from the negotiation entirely. He forced the sellers to completely weigh the potential outcomes of a cheap, generic marketing plan against the historical trends of his highly optimized, maximum yield strategy. The couple explicitly recognized that his proprietary email database was a massive, irreplaceable asset that no other agent in Dallas possessed. They actively chose Tier 3, and they gladly signed the listing agreement at his absolute maximum professional fee without ever asking for a single dollar in discounts. They understood that the premium fee was strictly tied to the premium digital exposure he could uniquely provide. Imagine if you never had to defensively justify your professional worth ever again. Imagine if sellers actively reviewed your marketing architecture and voluntarily elected to pay you the highest possible fee simply because your strategic positioning made the alternative options look incredibly risky and highly unprofitable. This 3-tier pricing architecture only works flawlessly because your meticulously crafted email marketing ecosystem already did the extremely heavy lifting of establishing your undeniable authority weeks before you ever knocked on their front door. The email triage established you as the highly sought-after specialist. The 3-tier presentation simply serves as the customized surgical treatment plan. You have successfully navigated the entire psychological journey from capturing a completely cold digital lead, nurturing them into a warm prospect through open-loop storytelling, surviving the brutal digital triage, and finally securing the highly lucrative listing agreement at your absolute maximum professional fee. But acquiring the signed contract is merely the opening sequence of the actual real estate transaction. You now possess a legally binding fiduciary obligation to actually sell their most valuable financial asset. Most agents simply hammer a wooden sign into the front yard, blindly upload some photos to the internet, and desperately pray that another agent brings them a qualified buyer. In the next intensely critical segment of this masterclass, I am going to completely dismantle that amateur approach and reveal exactly how to aggressively leverage the exact same email database you just used to acquire the listing to instantly generate a massive, highly competitive bidding war within the very first 48 hours of hitting the market, completely bypassing the traditional multiple listing service entirely. The traditional multiple listing service is fundamentally a massive digital commodity board. When you place a newly acquired listing directly onto the public market without any strategic pre-launch sequence, you are immediately diluting the perceived value of the physical asset. You are forcing your client's property to compete directly against thousands of other homes in a highly saturated, visually exhausting digital environment. The modern buyer in the year 2026 is completely numb to standard public inventory. They scroll through massive real estate portals with the exact same mindless apathy they use to scroll through social media feeds. To completely shatter this apathy and drive massive, concentrated demand, You must deploy the velvet rope strategy directly to your highly nurtured email database. You must psychologically engineer a scenario where your list of active buyers feels like they are gaining illicit, highly privileged access to a shadow market that the general public absolutely cannot see. We call this specific pre-market email sequence the whisper campaign. It completely reverses the traditional marketing timeline and defies conventional real estate logic. Instead of blasting the property everywhere all at once to anyone with an internet connection, you deliberately restrict information to manufacture intense curiosity. 7 days before the property is legally scheduled to hit the public multiple listing service, you deploy a highly calculated, text-only email strictly to the segment of your database that has previously indicated an interest in purchasing a home. You do not include massive, high-resolution photo galleries. You do not include elaborate virtual tours. You do not even include the exact street address. You write a deeply conversational, highly secretive message that reads exactly like an insider tip from a well-connected friend in the industry. Let us meticulously examine the brilliant execution of this strategy by Christopher Wallace, a top-producing broker operating in the highly constrained inventory market of Denver, Colorado. Christopher secured a stunning mid-century modern listing in a highly coveted historic neighborhood. Instead of rushing to hammer a generic sign into the front yard, he initiated a whisper campaign strictly to his database of 2,000 local buyers. His initial email subject line simply read, "Off-market mid-century in Washington Park, please do not share." The body of the email was strictly 3 sentences long. It casually stated that he was finalizing the digital marketing assets for a highly unique, fully renovated property that would likely trigger a massive, unpredictable bidding war once it hit the public market the following Thursday. He explicitly mentioned one highly specific, deeply desirable feature, which was a completely soundproof detached home office, a massive selling point for the remote workforce dominating the 2026 economy. He ended the email with a strict, frictionless call to action, simply stating that if they wanted private access to the unbranded photos before the general public was allowed to see them, they needed to reply directly to the email with the word access. The psychological impact of this specific email architecture is absolutely profound. Christopher did not try to aggressively sell the house. He strictly sold the exclusive privilege of simply looking at the house. Human beings are biologically hardwired to desperately desire anything they perceive as scarce, restricted, or completely off-limits to the masses. By purposely withholding the exact details and requiring the buyer to actively request access, Christopher transformed a passive, scrolling audience into an aggressively engaged mob. The historical trends of this specific velvet rope strategy indicate that open rates for these whisper emails routinely exceed 65%. Within 4 hours of sending that single text-only message, Christopher received over 140 direct replies from highly motivated buyers and aggressive local investors practically begging for the details. He had successfully created a massive, highly concentrated pool of localized demand before he even spent a single dollar on public digital advertising. Once the prospective buyers reply with the requested word, you do not just send them a generic link to a public website. You must fiercely protect the illusion of extreme exclusivity. You send a highly restricted, password-protected digital folder containing a brief, handheld video walkthrough and the preliminary pricing strategy. Furthermore, the back-end analytics of this specific email strategy provide you with an unfair, highly lucrative advantage. While the traditional real estate agent is completely blind to who is actually viewing their public listings online, you possess exact, granular behavioral data. When you send out the password-protected digital folder to the people who requested access, your email marketing software tracks every single click. You know exactly which prospective buyer opened the folder, you know exactly how many times they viewed the video walkthrough, and you know exactly how many minutes they spent intensely analyzing the floor plans. If you see that a specific buyer opened the pricing document 14 times between midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning, you do not need to guess if they are interested. You possess the absolute certainty of data. You can proactively reach out to that buyer's representative the next morning and subtly encourage a strong preemptive offer, leveraging your proprietary analytics to orchestrate the exact outcome your seller desperately desires. But you do not stop at simply sending a digital folder. You invite this specific, highly engaged segment of your database to an exclusive, unadvertised, off-market viewing window. You explain that because they are highly valued members of your private community, you are allowing them to physically tour the property on a Tuesday evening, a full 48 hours before the official public open house is scheduled for the weekend. Imagine if you are a prospective buyer in Denver, who has been violently outbid on 4 different houses over the last 6 months. You are completely exhausted, deeply frustrated, and absolutely terrified of competing on the public market. Suddenly, you receive an exclusive invitation from a recognized local expert, offering you a private, front-row seat to an off-market property precisely in your target neighborhood. You are going to cancel absolutely all of your Tuesday evening plans to attend that private showing. When you arrive at the physical property, you are not alone. You are walking through the front door alongside 20 other highly qualified, deeply anxious buyers from that exact same VIP email list. You instantly recognize the massive competition in the room. You physically feel the tension in the air. This meticulously orchestrated environment organically generates the exact psychological pressure required to trigger highly aggressive, above-ask offers without you ever having to utilize cheap sales tactics. Returning to Christopher in Denver, he hosted his private, off-market viewing on a Tuesday evening exclusively for the people who replied to his whisper campaign. He did not put a single sign in the yard. He did not post a single public advertisement. Yet, his listing was absolutely packed with highly qualified buyers. By Wednesday morning, Christopher was holding 4 incredibly strong, highly competitive written offers, all with waived appraisal contingencies and completely flexible closing dates, strictly because the buyers were terrified of losing the property to the massive public market on Thursday. He successfully negotiated a final purchase price significantly higher than the initial Tier 3 maximum yield valuation he originally promised his seller. He achieved this massive victory without ever subjecting his client to the agonizing stress of a public open house, and he did it entirely by leveraging the profound power of his own email database. You have now successfully executed the ultimate real estate lifecycle. You used a highly specialized lead magnet to ethically capture the contact information of a local homeowner. You nurtured that completely cold lead into a warm, trusting relationship through an open-loop welcome sequence. You successfully triaged their inbound inquiry, completely flipped the traditional power dynamic during the diagnostic phone consultation, and secured the highly lucrative listing agreement using a sophisticated 3-tier pricing architecture. You then immediately turned around and successfully liquidated that massive financial asset in record time by orchestrating a highly psychological whisper campaign directly to your VIP buyer list. Most agents would wildly celebrate this massive commission check and immediately start the entire exhausting process over again from absolute scratch. They view the closed transaction as the absolute end of the road. This is the final, most devastating mistake that keeps otherwise brilliant agents permanently trapped in the relentless hustle culture. A truly optimized digital business does not end at the closing table. It systematically compounds. In the final, most crucial segment of this masterclass, we are going to completely tear down the post-closing architecture, and I will reveal the exact digital mechanism you must deploy the moment the funds hit your bank account that practically forces your local market to instantly hand you your next 3 listings absolutely free. The precise moment the wire transfer clears and the title company officially records the deed, the vast majority of real estate professionals mentally check out. They send a generic, highly expensive glossy postcard to the surrounding neighborhood that simply says "just sold," featuring a tiny, unreadable picture of the house and a massive picture of their own face. This antiquated approach is financially reckless and completely ignores the profound psychological curiosity of the local market. The neighbors living on that exact same street do not care about your headshot. They care obsessively about their own net worth. They watched the moving trucks arrive, they saw the massive influx of cars during your highly exclusive off-market viewing window, and they are currently experiencing intense, burning curiosity about exactly how much money their neighbor just walked away with. If you simply send them a generic postcard, you are completely wasting the single greatest compounding marketing opportunity in the entire real estate industry. You must deploy what we call the hyper-transparent case study email directly to your localized database within 24 hours of closing. This specific digital mechanism completely dismantles the traditional, secretive nature of real estate transactions and leverages extreme transparency to instantly manufacture deep trust and aggressive inbound demand. Instead of a boastful single-sentence announcement, you are going to write a deeply engaging multi-paragraph narrative that completely deconstructs the exact anatomy of the sale you just orchestrated. You send this email strictly to the segment of your database that owns property in that specific zip code, and the subject line must instantly trigger their financial curiosity. A subject line that simply reads the truth about what happened at the property on Elm Street commands absolute attention. The historical trends of open rates for this specific type of hyperlocal narrative consistently shatter industry averages, frequently exceeding 70%, because you are tapping directly into the biological human urge to know exactly what is happening in their immediate tribe. Let us deeply analyze a fascinating case study involving Daniel Foster, a highly strategic agent operating in the aggressively shifting market of Nashville, Tennessee, in the year 2026. Daniel had just successfully closed a challenging transaction using the exact three-tier maximum yield pricing strategy and the off-market whisper campaign we previously discussed. Instead of buying a billboard to celebrate his victory, Daniel sat down at his computer the morning after closing and drafted a highly detailed case study email to his local database. He did not brag about his massive commission. He explicitly detailed the massive, terrifying obstacle the sellers faced when their initial buyer financing completely fell through at the absolute last minute due to shifting 2026 lending regulations. Daniel wrote a compelling story about exactly how he utilized his proprietary database of cash buyers to immediately pivot the strategy, completely bypass the public market, and secure a secondary backup offer within 12 hours, completely saving the transaction and protecting the seller's equity. Daniel then presented the raw, unvarnished data. He stated exactly how many days the property was actually on the market, the specific number of private showings he orchestrated, and the final percentage above the initial fair market valuation he successfully negotiated. By completely pulling back the curtain and showing the local homeowners the exact, rigorous professional execution required to navigate a complex modern transaction, Daniel positioned himself as the absolute, undisputed intellectual authority in Nashville. He concluded the email not with a generic request for blind referrals, but with a highly specific, low-friction call to action perfectly aligned with the narrative. He wrote, "If you are planning to navigate this highly unpredictable Nashville market in the next 6 months, and want to explore exactly how this specific off-market strategy could protect your home equity, simply, this entire masterclass has fundamentally deconstructed the absolute most powerful, highly neglected digital asset available to the modern real estate professional. From the initial hyperlocal lead magnet designed to capture verified contact information, through the psychological tension of the open-loop welcome sequence, to the rigorous digital triage, the three-tier pricing presentation, the velvet rope whisper campaign, and finally the post-closing hyper-transparent case study, you now possess the complete end-to-end architecture of a highly profitable, scalable email marketing ecosystem. You are absolutely no longer renting access to your audience from massive technology conglomerates that can drastically alter their algorithms overnight and instantly destroy your livelihood. You completely own the distribution channel. You completely dictate the exact narrative. You completely control the historical trends of your own business growth. This is the exact fundamental difference between a stressed, overworked real estate agent desperately chasing the next transaction and a highly compensated, profoundly respected real estate broker building a massive legacy business asset. However, simply possessing this massive architectural framework and understanding exactly how to write these highly psychological emails is strictly only the beginning of your absolute digital dominance. If you manually attempt to type out every single one of these messages, actively monitor the reply rates, and manually move prospects between your different educational campaigns every single day, you will rapidly become a complete prisoner to your own computer keyboard. You will simply trade the physical exhaustion of door knocking for the agonizing digital exhaustion of endless data entry. To truly achieve massive financial freedom and build a highly scalable business that operates effortlessly in the background while you sleep, you must completely automate this entire communication sequence using advanced, behavioral-based digital triggers. The true elite producers in 2026 absolutely do not touch their keyboards to manually send an email. They build intelligent, invisible machines that do the heavy lifting for them. In our next highly intensive training session, we are going to dive straight into the incredibly complex, highly secretive back-end of automated workflow logic, and I am going to show you exactly how to build the precise behavioral triggers that automatically deploy these specific emails the exact second a prospect visits your website, completely turning your digital presence into a highly aggressive, 24-hour robotic sales force.